Today I choose to follow you.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, the 15th of February, and got an awesome cup of coffee with great crema here this morning. If you have your Bibles, turn to Luke chapter 13. I'm going to read a fairly lengthy passage this morning, 10 to 17, but I want to just give you the account. And there's a song that the Gaithers sing somewhere between Jesus and John Wayne. Now, John Wayne was a cowboy, tough as nails kind of guy. And Jesus is often pictured or thought to be, this gentle, mild, accommodating, loving. I want to show you something. And Jesus was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath. And there was a woman who for 18 years had had a sickness caused by a spirit, and she was bent double and could not straighten up at all. When Jesus saw her, he called her over and said to her, "Woman, you are freed from your sickness." And he laid his hands on her, and immediately she was made erect again and began glorifying God. But the synagogue official, indignant because Jesus had healed on the Sabbath, began saying to the crowd in response, "There are 6 days in which work should be done, so come during them and get healed, and not on the Sabbath day." But the Lord answered him and said, "You hypocrites, does not each of you on the Sabbath untie his ox or his donkey from the stall and lead him away to water? And this woman, a daughter of Abraham, as she is, whom Satan has bound for 18 long years, should she not also have been released from this bond on the Sabbath day?" As he said this, all his opponents were being humiliated, and the entire crowd was rejoicing over all the glorious things being done by him. Now, that's a long portion, but basically what I want to say to you is Jesus is the one who reaches out. Jesus is the one who touches a woman who has been diseased by a spiritual sickness that has had her bound for 18 years. Imagine not being able to stand up straight for 18 years. And Jesus sees this, has sympathy, has compassion, calls her over, touches her, doesn't just say "you healed," but touches her and gets into her space and releases her from the bondage that has held her captive for 18 years. And that's an awesome Jesus that I want to respond to. And that's the Jesus that sees the least, the lost, and the lonely, the one who reaches into a hurting world and brings God's love, God's deliverance. And that's awesome and amazing. But then, remember the scene from William Wallace? When on the Battle of Hastings, he turns to his friends and he says to them, "Prepare for war, prepare the guys for war." And they say to him, "What are you going to do?" He says, "I'm going to pick a fight." And he goes and puts those ridiculous demands to the English army, knowing that they will reject them so that there can be a battle. Jesus could have just walked away. Jesus could have just apologized and melted away into the crowd. But what does he do? In response to what the synagogue official was saying, he says, "You hypocrites, does not each of you on the Sabbath untie his ox or his donkey from the stall and lead him away to water him?" Jesus is picking a fight here. Jesus doesn't just melt into the crowd. Jesus has been the John Wayne who's the cowboy who says, "Hey, bring it on." He says to them, he takes them on. This woman has been bound 18 years and you can't see it. You want her to wait another day and come on one of the 6 days that work can be done. And Jesus picks a fight here. He says to his disciples, "Prepare for war." He humiliated. His opponents were being humiliated. Have you ever thought about that with Jesus? That he would deliberately be confrontational? And that he would cause other people to be humiliated in the process? That's a side of Jesus that encourages me as a man, because sometimes I want to stand up and I want to make a point, and I want to not always take everyone else's feelings into consideration. I want to confront truth, and I want to confront error. I want to confront lies. I want to confront hypocrisy with the truth, and I don't always want to be nice. And here Jesus stands up for truth. He stands up for what's right. And he confronts hypocrisy face on. And sometimes I think today in the church, we tiptoe around one another, not calling one another out. Paul takes on Matthew. He says to him, yeah, when there are no Jews around, you eat with the Gentiles. But as soon as there's a Jew in the room, you go sit with the Jews and you ignore the Gentiles. You don't eat with them. You hypocrite. And two brothers who both love the Lord, take one another on and show one another error. I think sometimes in the church we just pussyfoot around what we should be confronting. And in the workplace, sometimes we excuse not doing the right thing by saying, oh, I'm being tactful, or I'm taking into consideration the other person's feelings. But sometimes the truth needs to cause the other person to be a little bit humiliated in order to get them to face up to the error and to start living out the truth. That's my thought for Wednesday, for yourself and for me. And let's be Jesus all the time, but let's see the John Wayne in Jesus, and not just see the gentle Jesus, meek and mild. Let's see the John Wayne, the real man in Jesus as well. Have a wonderful Wednesday.